Greetings everyone, I'm Stefan, and this is a long-awaited PSIONIC Rush build. This is an empire that has a dual purpose. First, you want to dominate with your rush, and then you want to expand and explore the Shroud to get the mysteries right around year 40 or so, because this build is meant to rush down to the PSIONIC ascension as fast as possible, and also rush down another empire at year 30, and perhaps more than one empire. After all, at year 30, with the strategy that I'll be demonstrating, you should have about, let's say 8,000 fleet power worth of destroyers, and you should be able to demolish absolutely anyone, unless they are also going for a similar build. Now, before we begin, I do have to point out that this is not the most efficient of rush builds. Its main purpose is to have fun throughout the entire game, but if you really want to rush someone down, you should use the strategy that I'll be demonstrating in this video with the Slaver Technocracy build. And with this, you should be able to get up to 10,000 fleet power by year 30 in a normal multiplayer setting. So what we're going to do is go over this build, and then I'll be demonstrating the strategy that may or may not ruin a lot of people's multiplayer games. Now, as far as this Empire build goes, we are doing two things at once. First, we are maintaining a very powerful economy with Slaver Guilds and Authoritarian, and also are increasing our chances of getting PSIONIC Theory with Fanatic Spiritualist. Now, if you're playing just for performance, you'll be running Technocracy instead of Fanatic Spiritualist, but since we're running, for the memes and for the Shroud, we are doing Fanatic Spiritualist and Exalted Priesthood in combination with Traditional. This provides us with a whole bunch of Unity production, and by the time you actually get the PSIONIC Theory tech, you'll have plenty of Ascension perks open, and your Tradition tree is going to be pretty filled out. Now, as far as the other trades go, we are running Adaptive to make sure that, we get that little bit extra habitability to make sure we have fewer problems on our colonies, and of course going with Unruly and Deviants because those two are pretty much free picks. As far as our origin goes, we are going with Prosperous Unification. This is one of the best origins available to rush someone down early, and is generally the best option available if you're playing multiplayer. Generally, people ban things like Ring Worlds and Void Dwellers, and so going with Prosperous Unification is a very safe choice. We are also going to be relying on those extra amenities and production to make sure that we get massive amounts of alloys and resources along the way. Now, for this demonstration, I'll be using a 0.75 tech tuition cost, just because it's the most common one when it comes to multiplayer. So let's begin, and let's show off this build. When it comes to playing the build, the rush strategy is quite dominant, and you have to do everything quite perfectly to get that 8k destroyer fleet. So what we're going to do is do the things that we normally do at the start of any match. We're going to want to disband our corvette fleet in order to obtain some more resources. We are also going to want to sell off some of our excess resources and get enough resources for our research lab. Even though we are playing as a Spiritualist Empire, we are still going to want to get as much tech as possible to make sure that our fleet rush is as good as possible. We're going to want to build 4 research labs on our home planet, and for that we're going to have to replace the admin offices with the research lab. Don't worry, it is quite efficient to do that. You don't get that much of a penalty for being over admin cap, especially early on. It does help that our expansion is not going to be that significant. We're going to want to go ahead and expand into only 4 systems, 2 of which should be our guaranteed habitable planets. We're not really concerned with getting a big blob of our empire going at the start. Instead, we're going to want to concern ourselves with that once we conquer our first victim. All we need for that are just the 2 guaranteed planets and 5 systems in total to make sure we can use all of our starbase capacity. As we are going for the supremacy tree first, we're going to get those extra starbases, and we're going to fill all of them with anchorages or shipyards. However, that will only come in the future because, of course, if we're building starbases before then, we are going to have to pay for their upkeep, and that is not efficient. For now, we want to focus on 2 things: expanding and getting the proper techs. We're going to want to get the proper military techs, which includes shields and preferably some economy if possible, and then the PSIONIC Theory tech as soon as possible. Fortunately, in this playthrough, we already have a Maniacal Scientist, and this is going to help significantly with getting PSIONIC Theory. Overall, you want to get the Maniacal Scientist as soon as possible, because that will increase your chances of getting PSIONIC Theory significantly. Going with the same Spiritualist theme, we're going to reject all Toasters and not actually go down the robotic path. You could do that potentially in the future, but for now we're just going to disable robotic workers and mess with our policies a bit as well. These 3 are the policies you should change at the beginning, and a bit later into the game, we're going to want to change our diplomatic stance over to Isolationist. That will provide us with a few more bonuses, but for now we want to expand and get those 4 systems. So let's go ahead and do so. we're going to want to get another science ship going in order to make sure that we have a scientist assisting research all the way throughout the game. We want to maximize our research production as much as possible, and in fact we're going to want to roll for the proper leader as soon as possible as well. For our first tradition tree, we're going to want to go for supremacy, and after that we're going to go for harmony. Harmony is going to allow us to get very high stability across our planets, and supremacy is of course necessary to enhance your fleet. We are also going to want to boost our stability on our capital planet by going ahead and declaring the Crime Lord deal. Of course, you want to do this as early as possible to make sure you get that extra stability and extra resource output. Alright, at this point we have plenty of food and storage, and we're going to have plenty enough for our second colony ship. So what we're going to do now is actually start selling our food, and selling food is actually quite efficient. If you have farmers producing food and then you sell food on the market, it's about as efficient as you having tech workers instead. So technicians and farmers are pretty much equivalent in how much value they produce, as long as you can potentially sell the food. Of course, you cannot sell too much food. In fact, I believe it's up to 30 or 30 something food per month that you can sell without the prices going significantly down, but you can also start buying stuff on the market as well. We're going to want to go for up to 13 alloys per month getting bought, because at this point we're just focusing on technology, and getting some alloy production will be a nice bonus. As you can see, after doing a few monthly trade deals, we can be in a very good economic situation. We can get a lot of alloys per month, and not get a lot of excess resources where we don't want them. Alright, wonderful. We have re-rolled for an intellectual leader, and you want to do this as quickly as possible. When you do build more things in your primary sector, your leader levels up, and you're going to get plenty of other bonuses along the way. So we're going to want to reassign the governor, and now we have the maximum possible research boosts, which is wonderful. Now our capital has reached 35 pops. So what we're going to do is build an additional alloy foundry, and at this point we're not actually going to want our capital to grow any further. We're going to want to resettle any extra pops to our colonies and try to develop them as soon as possible. We're going to want some alloy foundries on both of these new colonies, and of course alloy foundries mean more alloys, and that means more ships. Wonderful, our first colony is up and running, and we're going to want to provide some generator districts or some other districts as soon as possible. Looks like we also have some friendly Xenos as neighbors. What we're actually going to do is improve relations with them as long as possible, because normally in multiplayer you would have neutral relations up until year 30. These guys could potentially attack us, which would be a shame, but if we have improved relations, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Alrighty, so we have our second colony colonized, and at this point all we're really going to want to do is make sure to maximize our building slots, and to make sure we're still choosing the proper traditions, ascensions, and technologies. We're going to want to go for some very good technologies such as plasma launchers or autocannons, and we're also going to want to keep an eye out for psionic theory. Otherwise, this part of the game is actually going to be quite monotonous, and I'm going to skip over to year 25 where we can do something more exciting. Alrighty, we have made it to year 25, and our economy is still doing quite nicely. As you can see, we have 35 pops on our main planet, and 8 and 7 pops respectively on our colonies. At this point we can actually even enable the Crown Lord deal, so what we're going to do is unemploy the governor and enable it on our colonies. Now in this colony we don't quite have enough crime to do the Crown Lord deal, so instead we're going to force it via unemployment. We're going to unemploy pops, make them really unhappy, and now we are going to be doing the Crown Lord deal. At this point we're going to re-employ the pops, and because this happened in the middle of the month, this is not actually going to affect anything. So now the situation is back to normal and we have plenty more production. Now speaking of production, we're going to want to do some of that for our ships. We're going to want to start upgrading some of our starports to make sure we can field 3 anchorages and 2 shipyards. And we're going to start building a fleet in year 27. So let's prepare for that, and let's prepare a good ship design. Now, as far as our technology goes, we don't really have anything to affect our ships at this point. So in fact, we're going to go ahead and buy up some minerals and replace one of our science labs with an alloy foundry. As for our ships, we're going to want to design them as efficiently as possible. Normally you can just auto-complete the ship and optimize it however you want. For our ships, we're going to want as many shields as possible because those regen, and those are really going to help us in sustaining the push towards the enemy capital. We're going to want about 15 corvettes in our fleet, and we're going to want about 40 destroyers in our fleet as well. So let's go ahead, go for the gunship bow, auto-complete ship, try to get as many shields as possible, and make sure all our weapons are top tier. We did get lucky this run with an autocannon / blue laser combo. We could have gotten even more lucky with plasma launchers and autocannons, or plasma launchers and tier 3 railguns. Either combination works very well, but either way, even if you are just rocking normal blue lasers and railguns, you're going to be relatively fine, just as long as your enemy is not rushing as well. Now, even though we are doing all these preparations, we're also going to want to take a look at our economy and make sure our empire is not falling apart. So let's make sure to keep all our pops employed and wait until year 27 when we actually start building the fleet. Alrighty, now in year 27, we can actually start spamming the ships. So let's go ahead, queue up 15 corvettes and get as many destroyers as possible. At this point, we're also going to want to change our stance from isolationist to supremacist. So let's go for that. And now we're actually going to want to take a look at our enemy and maybe start making some claims. So let's go ahead, harm relations, and make these guys our rival as soon as possible. Once we start building ships, our fleet power is going to go up dramatically, and we are actually going to get the ability to rival. Right now we are simply too pathetic, and we cannot do that yet. Alrighty, now we can make them a rival, and we can start claiming some of their space. Let's go ahead, claim as much territory as possible, and yeah, this is gonna be pretty good. Alright, now that we're in year 29, let's go ahead and make some armies, because of course, we're gonna need some of those to actually do the invading. At this point, you might start running some deficits in energy credits, so what we're gonna do is actually start selling some of the alloys, because we're not gonna need the alloys during the war. As long as they're above 0, we're gonna be good. Alrighty, looks like we are now in year 30 and our fleet has finished construction. We are a little bit over naval cap, but that's not going to matter too much because some of our ships are going to die anyways. And now we are ready for invasion. As you can see, we have approximately 8,000 fleet power ready, and even though our economy is not doing too well, we can still go ahead and start selling some stuff to make sure that we stay afloat during this conflict. Now let's make any potential last claims. Order our transports to go ahead and follow the main fleet, order the fleet to go to the border system, and now we declare war. As you can see, these guys are pathetic, and that's going to be the case if you pull this strat off in multiplayer. Unless someone is specifically trying to rush, they will not have an 8,000 fleet power fleet, and you will easily be able to humiliate them, you know, make them your tribute or something like that. However, in our case, we're just going to go ahead and completely conquer them.
The crusade of the righteous begins.
Strategy for this is relatively simple. Just go for their stations, make sure they can't produce any more ships, and go for their capital.
Heretic station engaged.
Even though these guys have some sort of fleet power, it stands absolutely no chance against this rush.
Our champions have secured a heathen planet.
Well, that was easy. War took a little bit longer than you might normally expect, but that is purely up to you and the circumstances of the enemy empire. Now, these guys are still alive because they seem to have sneakily colonized the planet while we were at war, but that kind of works to our advantage. You know, we have some border buffer, and that is quite alright, especially since we can, at this point, you know, go for another war and demand their vassalization. Either way, we are now on top. Our economy is going to be doing quite well, and since we have annexed the enemy capital, we're going to have plenty of production going on there. Now, we want to make sure that their pops are integrated as a normal species instead of a chattel slavery species. Let's go ahead, make them full citizens, and at this point, we can also go for a few crime lord deals as well.
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
And now we have also gotten Psionic Theory as one of our tech options. That is quite incredible. It is quite lucky to get this early, but you're generally going to get it within 50 years or so. So now we're going to go for this technology, get some Ascension perk slots open, unlock the Shroud, and be a Psionic really early on into the game. What's going to help is that we're going to start spamming some temples everywhere and make sure our Unity production is going up. Of course, we're also going to want to increase our tech production, and since we have plenty of pops at this point, we're going to be in a very, very good spot. And what's absolutely wonderful is that the empire that we just conquered is integrating relatively well. We have relatively high stability across all the planets. We can of course boost it with Crown Lord deals if we want. And we have a very strong foundation for making sure our economy and our empire prospers. But anyways, that'll do it for today. I'll be making more videos like this in the future, so subscribe if you want to see more very interesting and very overpowered builds. Now, during the making of this video, I had a few technical difficulties. Thankfully, I was able to replace all lost hardware thanks to my Patreon supporters, so thank you guys so much. I would also like to thank Snoo and Stefan specifically for helping me come up with this build. Those guys are in Discord, and if you want to join the Discord and join the community, there's a link in the description. Anyways, I hope to see you guys soon, and I hope my hardware doesn't give out once more. Thanks, and bye-bye.